Each year in Ontario, approximately 1,000 construction workers suffer a lost time injury while using a ladder. There is no single cause of ladder accidents, but if the correct selection of equipment is made and the worker is properly trained in its use, it follows that the possibility of injury will be greatly reduced. In this session, you will learn how to identify, select, and correctly use the ladders most commonly found on construction sites. Also, should the need arise, we will demonstrate how to construct a job-built ladder. The Canadian Standards Association, CSA, labels ladders in 3 grades. Grade 1, Construction and Industrial for heavy duty. Grade 2, Trade and Farm for medium duty. Grade 3, Household for light duty. Industrial grade ladders are generally recommended for long-term construction use. Extension and step ladders are generally available in 3 basic materials: wood, aluminum, and fiberglass. First, because they've been around the longest, we'll look at wooden ladders. Constructed of select lumber stock, they hold up well if care is taken to prevent weathering. Most wooden step ladders manufactured today are equipped with steel supports under each rung. The rods are threaded on the ends and fastened with nuts and washers. This makes it possible to tighten a ladder that has loosened by normal wear. Good quality step ladders are also equipped with truss blocks under each rung for added support. The main drawback to wooden ladders is weight. They are slightly heavier than other industrial-grade ladders. Aluminum ladders are widely used in construction. They are lighter than wooden ladders and do not deteriorate when exposed to severe weather conditions. One serious drawback to aluminum ladders is that they conduct electricity. Never use aluminum ladders around live electrical conductors and equipment. Fiberglass ladders are comparable in weight to wooden ladders. They don't conduct well and are therefore favored by people working with electricity. Fiberglass ladders are prone to scuffing damage. Take care to avoid impacts that can fracture the fiber sheath. In addition to the more common types of ladders, here are some specialty ladders that will be seen on construction sites. The platform step ladder provides a comfortable, safe working level. Its only drawback is that the platform can't be raised or lowered. The caster-equipped safety ladder is very good for long-term use in one area, but unwieldy to transport because it does not fold down. When using step ladders, set up on a clear, level area. Remove all obstructions in order to avoid outreaching. Fully extend the legs and lock the braces. Don't use the top step of the ladder as a work platform. The ladder should be long enough to allow the worker to stand on the 3rd or 4th step from the top. In this way, his knees can provide balance against the side rails. Keep both feet on the same rung when working in a fixed location. When using extension ladders, allow a 3-foot projection above the landing and a lap of at least 3 or 4 rungs in the sections. Place the base of the ladder 1 foot away from the wall for every 4 feet of vertical height. Landing areas at the top and bottom of a ladder should be kept clear of obstructions. The base of the ladder should rest on a reasonably level surface. Ladders used on slippery or polished surfaces should be equipped with non-skid feet. Secure the ladder to prevent slipping. If the base is to rest on soft ground, use a mud sill in the bottom of a trench. Another method is to tie back the ladder base to a firm support. The base of a ladder should never be supported on the bottom rung. the weight should rest only on the side rails. The top of a ladder should never rest on a rung. Both side rails should make contact with the structure. Otherwise, use a cross brace to distribute the load to both side rails. After the base is secured, the ladder should be tied off at the top to prevent movement. Tie off to a column or other firm support. Use rope or sturdy wire. Inspect all ladders for structural defects before and during use. Replace missing rungs, split side rails, or defective hardware. If damage is serious, discard the ladder. Ladders should never be painted. Paint will hide defects in rungs and side rails and increases conductivity. However, a clear wood preservative applied at intervals can extend the life of wooden ladders. Depending on the length and weight of the ladder, one person may not be able to erect it safely. Factors such as wind or confined space may also make it difficult. It is always safer to use 2 people in such circumstances. If the ladder is double-width job-built or a long extension ladder, even more help may be necessary. If the ladder must be raised by one person and is not too heavy or long, it should have the base placed against a solid support such as a wall, and then be walked upright. A single ladder should be used by only one person at a time. For heavy up and down traffic, use a double-width ladder. When climbing up or down a ladder, face the ladder and maintain 3-point contact at all times. That is, 2 hands and 1 foot, or 2 feet and 1 hand on the ladder at all times. Ladders should be placed out of the path of passing vehicles and equipment. This is also important where people are passing through doors or are moving materials, tools, or hand trucks through passageways. Remember to look carefully for overhead wiring in the area before beginning to stand any ladder upright or before moving any ladder. Never use the paint platform on a stepladder as a footrest. Never place a stepladder on a box, table, or scaffold platform to gain extra height. A ladder should never be used horizontally as a scaffold plank. Consider platform-type stepladders as a practical alternative. This type of ladder has a comfortable, secure working platform with a support rail built in. Or, better still, use a rolling scaffold. Heavy or unwieldy objects should not be carried up ladders. It is much safer to use a hoist, forklift, or rope to move materials to different levels. Ladders should always be removed at the end of the workday to prevent children from gaining access to dangerous areas. Store ladders in a lockup or remove them from the site to prevent damage or unauthorized use. Remember, the majority of injuries are the result of falls. Protect yourself by selecting the correct ladder, setting it up properly, and using common sense when working on it. In this section, we will demonstrate how to construct a job-built ladder. Building a single-width ladder. Side rails. Normally, job site lumber is construction grade number 2 or better. Select from this straight-grained lumber, free of loose knots, splinters, or shakes. The side rails of a single-width ladder, not exceeding 19 feet, must not be less than 2 inches by 4 inches. In order to avoid any mistakes later on, identify the top side of the rails. Remember, the crown and small knots must face the rung side. Rungs. Minimum width of the ladder should be 16 inches, with a maximum width of 24 inches. Start by cutting a pattern for the rungs. Cut ends should be square and smooth for measuring and marking off additional rungs. Use a handsaw for a clean, accurate job. To start a cut, guide your saw with your thumb. Be aware that if the saw jumps, your thumb is up high enough to prevent it from being cut. Once the pattern is cut, use it to mark off additional rungs on the lumber. Cut out the pieces with knots and twisted grain. Remember, each rung has to be able to withstand the impact of at least 250 pounds. You can use a circular saw to cut the rungs, but make sure that electrical and mechanical parts are working properly. Before making any adjustments, make sure that the power supply is disconnected. Test the outlet and cord with a circuit tester. If your saw isn't double insulated, be sure that it's properly grounded. The guard on the saw should move freely and return to its correct position when released. For a job like this, a sharp, rough-cut combination blade is best. Always be sure that the guard returns to its proper position after a cut. Remember that the thickness of the saw blade can decrease the length of each rung. Consistently cut to one side of your layout lines so that all the rungs come out the same length. Filler blocks. Rungs on a job-built ladder should be 1 foot or 30 centimeters apart from center to center. Measure a filler block to fit along the side rail between the rungs. Keep the pieces stacked close by for easy handling. Nailing. Place the side rails on the sawhorses with the marked side up. Nail filler blocks to one end of each rail. For a safe and sturdy ladder, it is important to use the right size nails. To provide good holding power, at least 2/3 of the nail should penetrate the side rail. With this type of ladder, there is no top or bottom. We can start nailing filler blocks and rungs at one end and work towards the other. Rungs must be attached at right angles to the rails. Otherwise, the ladder will be crooked and lean to one side when it's set up. To minimize the splitting of the lumber, start the first 2 nails as far from the edge as is possible, and then the 3rd nail towards the outside edge. Avoid nailing in a straight line, since this will encourage splitting. When splitting still occurs, try a different type of nail or blunt the nail by hitting the point with the hammer. A blunt nail has a tendency to cut the fibers, whereas a sharp nail will part the fibers. Once a few rungs have been installed, the ladder can be completed on a solid surface to minimize bouncing while nailing. Use a handsaw again to even off the side rails. Now we have a ladder that can stand up to a lot of traffic. Do not try to raise or move the ladder by yourself. It can cause too much strain or slip away on you. Place the ladder against a wall or have somebody hold it in place by putting his feet against the bottom to prevent it from slipping. Building a double-width ladder. When building a double-width ladder, follow the basic procedure used for the single-width ladder. Lumber must be of the same quality, straight-grained and free of loose knots, splinters, and shakes. If possible, the crown side and any knots in the lumber should both be facing up. A double-width ladder must be at least 5 feet in width. Side rails must be 2 by 6 inches, and rungs must be 2 by 4 inch lumber. If the end of the piece is split or not square, trim it with a circular saw. A circular saw is less tiring to use than cutting it with a handsaw. Use the circular saw to cut a pattern for the rungs. Make sure to stand to one side of the cutting line in case the saw kicks back. Keep the cord clear from obstructions. Once the lumber has been marked off, start cutting the rungs. Remember to consider the thickness of the saw blade when you're cutting. Filler blocks. Rungs must be 1 foot apart, measuring from center to center. Follow the same procedure as for cutting filler blocks for the single width ladder. Size up the lumber on the sawhorses. Arrange your 3 rails crown up. Mark rung spacing across all 3 side rails using a measuring tape and a square. Use 4-inch nails, also called spikes, to hold the filler blocks to the rails. Stagger the nails to avoid splitting the blocks. Start the nail at the proper angle with 1 or 2 soft hits. Do not hold the spike with 2 fingers. Use all your fingers. In case of a miss, you will do less damage to your hand. Nail the first rung to the outside rails. Use only 1 nail in each rail to start. Nail 1 rung at the other end of the ladder to hold the rails temporarily in place. Determine the center of the 2 rungs in order to position the middle rail. Temporarily attach the middle rail with 1 nail through each rung. Once you have lined up the rails and rungs at right angles, nail 1 rung permanently in place with 3 nails into each rail. Joints must be tight, otherwise the rungs could come loose and the ladder becomes unstable. Work your way down the length of the ladder, nailing blocks and rungs into position. Nails must be driven home for maximum holding power. Keep checking your work with a square to make sure that rungs and rails are at right angles. Nails should be checked after the wood has dried out and be hammered down again. It takes at least 4 strong people to put a double-width ladder in place. A well-built ladder can provide safe, efficient access on site.